But my question is what do we do in our churches? Because you also advocate and mention 90% of our resources, and forgive me if I get the stat wrong, you can correct me, but are aimed at reaching the 90% and not many of the unbelievers that are out in the world that are lost. Why are our resources dedicated to those who are unbelievers and yet, not unbelievers, excuse me, the saved, right, and we're not reaching the unsaved? Do you think that because our focus has been so internal, that's one of the reasons why we've lost our fire and lost our zeal as a Western evangelical whole, let's say? Not that there aren't remnants in there, because there are in churches people that have that right perspective. But do you feel like that is what's happened to Western evangelicalism and why we've lost our fire right now? Or is it more of God's pruning the vine in order to make us more effective?
I'm afraid repeating it might make listeners stop listening. But again, the fact is we get an A+ for raising up pastor teachers and a D- for raising up evangelists and church planters. About 93% of everybody baptized in our churches were born in the church. Then about 3% come in through Vacation Bible School. Another 3% come in through our clergy doing a fantastic job in weddings and funerals and reaching those unreached families. And 1% comes into the body of Christ from intentionally going to the marketplace, having non-believers in our homes, being in their homes for meals, and bringing them to Christ. 1%. And so we get so locked up in Romans and Revelation is because we're just talking to Christians and we're just being with Christians. And so to intentionally, my brother, I've asked clergy, my seminary professor, friends, and this is not being ugly, and the body of Christ is one of the greatest treasures that I have in the universe. But when I ask leaders, let's get real. How are Caucasian Americans in St. Johns County? Mm-hmm. How are Caucasian Americans in St. Johns County finding Jesus who have never once been in a church building? And we've never received an answer. Never received an answer. And the way that Caucasian Americans are finding Jesus and the process that they go through to belong to him is more how a Muslim and a Buddhist and a Hindu and a communist comes to faith than it is someone who's born in a church. So we don't even know how these people are coming to Christ, because if they don't come to church, we don't reach them.
So that's awesome. To me, that's the New Begin approach. Leslie Newbegin obviously advocated. He said he after he had been in India and he'd come back into the UK, he found that the UK was harder to reach than it was out in India. It's my contention that the missionary methods that have been established in different cultures and countries are what Western leaders, evangelicals, whatever you want to label it, the modifier there or the adjective, that's what needs to be adopted. And I don't think that's what seminaries and Bible colleges are advocating for. They're fighting some of the arguments of past generations rather than the current understanding, the current landscape. I think churches are waking up and leaders are waking up now to that they have to be able to do this, but no one really knows how. In the mission field, what did you have to do? And I say the mission field, it's the mission field that we're in now. But let's say that when you're in that culture that was not your home culture, you're not native culture, how did you have to go about making disciples in those places?
Learning the language and culture is the open sesame to people's heart. And for every time you have a challenge in evangelism or church planning, it's because you're not telling yourself the right Bible story. And when you tell yourself the right biblical setting, the right story is that everyone no exceptions, that came to Jesus in the New Testament came to Christ through a local language and local culture. No one came through translators. No one came through a third language or a Western language, if you will. And so learning the language and culture is the number one way of getting in their lives. And most Muslims globally, even in America, come to Christ by sharing meals in our homes, and but more likely us sharing meals in their homes that take 4, 6, 8 hours with extended family there. Evangelism in America and globally is not brain surgery. It is time consuming, and thereby comes the rub. Having our neighbors in our homes and being in their homes, it takes too much time. Where you live, I have talked to many of the larger churches, but in America, most, I'm going to make this up, but in staffs with 4 or more staff members, they haven't shared meals in each other's homes. And if most lost people are coming to Christ through sharing meals with people like you and I, with our kids, with our spouses, how would we imagine we're going to do that with non-believers when we're not doing it with believers? Our culture, our lives are so filled. COVID has changed so much. I'm sorry for shifting gears.
No, it's all right. We shift gears all the time on this show.
I've been listening to secular people talking about what COVID taught them was about all the things they don't need. And they don't need that second salary. They want to be with their family. They want to go camping. They want to sleep out in the backyard. They want to have their neighbors over, and they're not going back to those jobs because they'd rather be in their community and with their kids and with their spouses and as singles in their communities. The singles have found that they don't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on expensive alcoholic drinks in bars. They found it so much more fun to have their single friends over to their apartment playing board games. Taking time to be with lost people is the number one challenge that we have because we don't have the time.